Hi everyone, today we are going to do a deep dive with Tenalog to explore how Tenalog uses your client's goals to write the visit note and extract the structured data used for progress tracking. For those who don't know, Tenalog is a feature of Ambiki which takes an audio recording of a session and auto-generates a transcript, visit note, error analysis, parent summary, and the next session's plan, empowering you to focus all of your attention during the session on your client. So for today's deep dive, we're going to compare the output of uploading the same audio file under 4 different circumstances. Let's take a look at this small matrix here. We have 2 factors at play. So 1, does the client have goals loaded into Ambiki's system? And 2, is the client an articulation client or not? So these are our 4 cases, and we want to see, given the same exact audio file, how will Tenalog write the visit note for each case? I'll caveat this experiment by saying we of course 100% recommend that you set up your client's goals in Ambiki. The purpose of showing you clients without goals is merely to explore the differences in the output of Tenalog. Alright, so let's get started. Let's first take a look at the transcript of the session we'll be using. In this call, the therapist and patient are first looking at a book that has pictures of various sea creatures, and the patient is naming all the sea creatures he knows. The speech therapist and patient then get into a conversation about Pokemon, one of the patient's interests. They then talk about school, what the patient's doing that day, and they end talking about some hobbies of that patient. You'll be able to see that even with this short 6.5-minute session, we're able to create a really detailed visit note with a lot of progress tracking data. So first, let's look at case 1. This is our articulation patient who already has goals in Ambiki's system. We can see this patient is working on production of the W and F phonemes in the initial word position. So let's see how Tenalog did with the note. As we can see here in the objective section, it really honed in on our patient's goals of producing the W and the F phonemes in that initial word position. So if we look at this sound chart here and the objectives that it has pulled out of our note, we can see that it's only looked for sound samples in the initial position and only for these 2 phonemes. And we can see that it's automatically tied this back to our patient's goal. It's even pulled out some prompting for us. It's gotten the number of trials that we did. And if we go back to the transcript, we can actually see all the places that it scored these words, and we can see the scorings down to the phoneme level. So pretty cool. Now onto our second case study. This is an articulation patient who does not have any goals in Ambiki's system. So we know nothing about this patient. That means that Tenalog needs to base the note entirely off the transcript of the session. As you can see here, Tenalog scored a much wider set of words for this patient, covering a good deal of phonemes across all the positions. Quite a different visit note. Again, this is the exact same audio file, but we can see here that depending on the context and the goals that Tenalog is working with, the visit note comes out very different. Our third case study is a patient who we have turned off Tenalog's pronunciation scoring for. This patient does have goals, one about using age-appropriate vocabulary to talk about his environment, and another to name target vocabulary given a verbal description. Let's see how Tenalog did with a note that is not articulation pronunciation based. As you can see, Tenalog was able to extract the specific objectives they worked on in that session and tie those back to the patient's goals. In this case, Ambiki intentionally leaves the correct trials and total trials blank, and the therapist can easily fill those in. Okay, on to our last case study. This patient has Tenalog's pronunciation scoring turned off and also does not have any goals in the system. We can see the difference with the last visit note. The prior note was pulling out objectives tied specifically to the patient's goals, while in this case, as we don't have any goals, Tenalog has created the objectives based purely on the content of the transcript of the session. I hope this deep dive has helped shed some light on how Tenalog uses a patient's goals to write the visit note based on both the context of what happened in the session and what the therapist is targeting with that patient. Try a free trial of Tenalog today at ambiki.com.